Welcome to the Tech Trends Podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing, technology, research, and news. Today's episode is sponsored by the MFG Conference. I'm Ramia, Lloyd, and I'm here with...
I'm Elissa Davis.
Stephen Lamarca.
Benjamin Moses. How you guys doing?
Awesome.
Good.
Fantastic.
It's a great day. Speaking of being awesome, I heard it's Girl Scout season,
Yes.
and we've been talking about outdated ways of buying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some in real life. Oh man, I screwed that up. IRL examples. For your younger audience. My bad. So tell me about buying Girl Scout cookies nowadays.
Well, there's still the old school way, which is, Girl Scout troops outside of like Walmart, and I saw them at the Mosaic district, like in the Target lobby.
Yep.
And they were selling Girl Scout cookies there. You can also do it online, which is how I do it, because it feels weird to go up to this group of little girls and their moms and be like, "Can I get 6 boxes of cookies?" Yes, I'm by myself.
Give me all your Thin Mints and your Adderall.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, let me buy them online. I'm still supporting the Girl Scouts, but I'm like, I don't need people to know that I bought 2 boxes of Thin Mints and 1 box of every other cookie.
It's interesting because there's a lot of layers to that, because one is, I don't think the kids are judging you. The kids are just moving, but the moms judge you so hard with their looks. It's so rough.
It's
And
crazy.
it's so wrong that they do. It's like, shouldn't you be happy that your child is getting this sale?
Yeah.
Like, what is your problem?
Well, when I was growing up, at the big things was the big prize for Girl Scout cookies was those inflatable chairs. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
Yes,
No.
the bubble chairs. Yeah, I remember.
I never sold
Yes.
enough Girl Scout cookies to get one of those.
No, same.
And in retrospect, that's probably a good thing. But I now prefer the way of just buying them online because I don't want to be shamed for buying multiple boxes of Girl Scout cookies. But they're supposed to last me the whole season, right?
Yeah.
But I still like going up because the little girls get so excited
Yep,
when you go
yep.
up and you're like, "I'll have a box of these and a box of these," and they're counting the money, and I'm like, "Aw," but it's also odd to me that there's still little girls who go door to door to sell
Yeah.
Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Literally.
2024.
Yeah.
The other day, I had gotten home, was taking off my bag and stuff, getting ready for work. As soon as I turned my living room light on, I swear, there was a girl, and she came knock, knock, knock. And I was like, "Hey, what can I do for you?" And she's like, "Do you want to buy some Girl Scout cookies?" Her mom, and her little sister. It was a family event. I was like, this is fun. She's like, "Do you want to buy some Girl Scout cookies?" I'm like, "Sure. Let me get, a couple boxes." And I was like, "Oh, I don't have cash. I know you do the order."
Yep.
And then you come back. I'm assuming it's going to take months, something like that. She came back 40 minutes later with the boxes and was like, "Here are your cookies." And I was like,
Here's your cookies. Where's my cash?
I still don't have cash. I don't know what changed in the last 40 minutes for you, but for me, I didn't go anywhere.
Can you imagine if she got smart with you? It's like, you had 40 minutes to go to the bank.
And then
Where's my money?
I tried to relate to her. I was like, "Oh my God, I remember when I was a Girl Scout, they took weeks." And I swear she looked at me like, "Okay, Grandma." And I was like, "I'll get your cash next time. I'm sorry. We'll try again tomorrow.
Well,
Please
it's
don't beat me up."
Do you take Venmo?
No, I was like, Cash App, Apple Pay, I could do that. And she was like, "We'll come back tomorrow." And I was like,
Bet.
"Bet." I'm afraid of you. I turned all my lights off. I went and hide in my bed. I was like, "She's gonna get me."
It's because okay, in the 50s, right, when Girl Scouts would go door to door and selling cookies, that was relatively normal. In 2024, granted, in the late 90s, early aughts, my parents did not let me go door to door even with them. They were
Same.
very uncomfortable with that, and they were like, "We're not letting you go door to door to sell cookies to strangers. That's not." So mostly, I have a very big family, so we would just sell to all my family members.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Do you want Girl Scout cookies?" And they would just order them from us, and that's how we would sell our cookies. That's why we never won the prizes, because we didn't go door to door.
Did you guys ever send away for stuff on the cereal boxes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course
Yeah.
I
I
did.
love doing that. Man, I know I was just talking smack about the old way of buying stuff in the last episode, but hey, at least buying something, sending away for something in a cereal box, you're still not talking to a human.
Well, and I think
Moral of the story.
I don't know. For me, that's part of what gets me as an adult who lives in my own home now. It's I still get excited when I get mail,
Oh,
especially
yeah, definitely.
packages.
Yeah.
No, I used to get excited when I got mail. Now it gives me anxiety. I don't know how many
Really?
bills they're gonna be.
Oh.
It's all bills.
It's all bills.
I don't get anything.
But when I
else.
get
And
packages,
then the colleges have the audacity to reach out to you for donations. It's been a decade. Calm down.
that
slow
and
your roll.
volunteer.
there's a great John
volunteered.
Mulaney bit about that.
So we should we should definitely ask the audience what's the best way they should buy Girl Scout cookies,
Yes.
and what's the worst way that they've bought Girl Scout
Yes.
cookies this
And
season.
their favorite Girl Scout cookies, because if you say
that's fair.
Samoas, you're getting blocked.
And
Comment
those are
deleted.
so good. Okay, but I also learned the hack in college because we had a Dollar General near our campus. Dollar General's got knockoff Girl Scout cookies.
Yes, they did.
Walmart
also-
sells
And
them.
they're fire.
There's a great way you can make your own You can make your own Thin Mints, and the way that you do that is you take Ritz crackers and mint chocolate chips, and you melt down the mint chocolate chips. You dip the Ritz crackers in them, stick them in your freezer. You got homemade Thin Mints.
That's amazing. Okay, last question before let's move on. Thin Mints, store them in the freezer or in the pantry?
Freezer.
That's why I get 2 boxes, one of each.
Oh man,
Oh, genius.
that's a plot twist.
Genius.
Wow.
Just raising
You
the
know
bar.
the cookies.
Raising the bar.
I was a Girl Scout. Okay, I love Thin Mints. They're not my favorite actually. My favorite is the classic trefoil. Great shortbread.
Sure.
It's a perfect
Oh,
shortbread.
Okay.
So
That's like the weakest one.
It's basic.
but it's the original, right? It's the Girl Scout logo.
It's got the logo.
And they used to have this one. It was like an animal cracker that was like half dipped in chocolate. That was my favorite, but
I
they don't
remember
make
that.
that
Yep.
anymore.
I remember that. I was also a Girl Scout.
My beef with the Samoas, because I genuinely do like them. Like, I don't think they're my favorite, but they're up there.
Okay.
My beef with them though, you only get 15 to a box.
Oh.
Like, I'm trying to make my money work.
Okay. Again, especially because they're expensive now.
There's
Peanut butter patty all the way. Sometimes they're called tagalongs. When I was a Girl Scout, they were called peanut butter patties. Now they're tagalongs.
I am in the minority in that I'm a major peanut butter hater.
Oh no.
So that eliminates Do-si-dos
Yeah.
and
That makes sense.
tagalongs
You're a
for
cat
me.
person, not a dog person.
Yeah. Well, I'm a cat and a dog person,
That
but I
would
have a
make
cat.
sense.
Yes.
That makes
But
sense.
no, I've never. It was really funny because growing up, I hated peanut butter. My older sister hated jelly, so we,
Yeah.
you know,
Dang.
we're two sides of the
Incredible.
same coin.
Let's
yeah.
transition to a little technology. So one idea that we've been talking about is how do like areas or countries like help foster adoption, and then we've identified like the European style for adoption technology is a little bit different, and because it plays into some of the rules, and we've been talking about like car equipment. One thing we've observed is in European cars they allow for cameras on the side side mirrors, so you get rid of the mirrors, but you can put a little camera there, and then you guys also highlighted the adoption of headlights.
Well,
So
listen,
different
I
one.
want to talk about headlights.
Yeah.
Let's talk about headlights.
I have blue eyes.
Oh,
They're very sensitive.
yes.
And so when the lifted pickup behind me has their white LED headlights on at night, I can't see. I literally I can adjust my rear view
flip
mirror.
the little
Yeah.
toggle thing on the
Even when
mirror.
that's done, it's still reflecting
Brutal.
in my eyes, and then like sometimes like the side mirror catches it,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
still blinding me. So Europe and Asia have more regulations for headlights in terms of like so they don't burn your corneas. And that's I don't know.
So they have. It's weird to say that they have more regulations. Is you're not wrong. But we have in the U.S. have like a 100-year-old law on headlights saying that in the United States, all cars manufactured to be sold in the United States have to have basic headlights with only 2 modes, your low beams and your high beams. And when your high beams are activated, no other forward-facing light can be activated too. That's from the factory. What the pain you're explaining is the American aftermarket automotive market.
Yeah.
So like those jerks with their lifted pickups,
Yeah.
you're already starting with a lifted pickup.
Yeah.
Like there's
You're already
problems.
on the losing end. Yeah. No
Um,
offense, people with lifted pickups.
I used to get, back before I rode motorcycles, I used to get, and my friends used to get upset by being like, when if you had a motorcycle behind us, they'd blind you. But because their headlight is much higher up, it's like in line with where your head is.
Yeah.
In the car. Also, a lot of motorcyclists, not myself, but a lot of motorcyclists I know, always ride around, even in the day, with the high beams on. They, like the high beams are always on, and the purpose is being more visible. But But no, the big problem in the U.S. is the fact that you're only allowed to have 2 headlight modes. Something must have changed recently in legislation for the DRLs, daytime
Running lights.
daytime running lights, and that's just for added visibility. And my problem with daytime running lights is you see a lot of people driving around at night in an area like this
Right.
with only their DRLs on, which means no headlights on. The DRLs are on automatically. And I get it. Like, they're not trying to go stealth mode on purpose.
Right.
They forgot. And number one, in an area like this, in Tyson's Corner, where we never see the stars,
Right.
like at night, in the middle of the night, the sky is red because of the light pollution from DC. It's you don't need headlights in this area. You really don't. Up in Vermont, you want those headlights. Last year when I was in Frankfurt for Formnext, I got to experience the automated headlights.
Oh, yeah.
All the cars have them there, and they're bright.
Yep.
Like, when they're bright, but they don't always, like, if the front bumper is dirty on the cars, the sensors that detect if there's, like, humans or animals in front of them, they don't work the best. So there were, in my 4 nights there, I did experience getting blinded twice.
Okay.
Because those headlights are way more intense than the high beams we have here.
Right.
And but when they get you. Like, you have a big purple dot in the middle of your vision, and you can't see anything. But
I call that a normal day.
I have one more story before we move on.
Yeah.
And so my sister got married in Charlottesville in 2022. And she got married at a winery, and it was kind of, out there because the wineries out in Charlottesville are a little bit far away. And after the wedding, we were going to an Airbnb that they had rented, and we were going to go meet up with the rest of the bridal party. And it was me and my sister and her new husband who were riding in this car, and the Uber comes and picks us up, and it is a lifted pickup truck. It's a big-ass car. Big car. And we get in. I'm like, oh, my sister just got married. And he's like, oh, congratulations. She's still in her wedding dress and, like, all that stuff. And we're driving along these roads, and he has his high beams on, and then he's got this massive light kit on top of his car
the light beam.
that he flips on as he's driving. And let me tell you, it was like stadium lighting. Like, I could see for like 4 miles.
Yeah.
I was like, this cannot be legal. Like, this feels like it should not be legal. And like, when cars would come up, he'd turn it off, but usually not fast enough.
Right.
And so I'm like, this seems very dangerous.
that stuff's only supposed to be used. It is illegal. You're only supposed to use that stuff off-road.
Yep.
Yeah, we were not off-road. We were definitely on-road. So, that's one of the things. I always think of that when I think of people with their high beams. I'm like, I think of that guy, and I'm like, you're part of the problem.
So that's a good takeaway. I talked about the technology in countries, but the aftermarket and pushing past the regulations. Yeah, that's fair. And
we have a much stronger and more free and unregulated aftermarket here in the U.S. than we do. Like in Germany, where I got blinded by their laser headlights. That's what they're called. They're white laser headlights. Yeah. They're like, the headlights have an array in them that just, like, it's a very narrow beam, but there's multiple beams to, like, cover the spread of a conventional headlight. And then they have radars to detect whether or not there's a face that could potentially be blinded by it. And if that sensor's dirty, you will get blinded. But
and I do think you hit on a good point also about sensor robustness. Like, there are more sensors in vehicles, and that cascades to everything that we're doing. But, like, my rear view camera is dirty all the time. You expect me to clean that thing? Yeah. I barely have time to get in the car and get here on time. So
and the last thing about Germany, they're the most strict about aftermarket parts.
Right.
Like the most basic thing that people do, that gearheads do in the U.S., change your wheels. Yeah. Germany, the Germans are very. You need to go through so much paperwork to put on aftermarket wheels. Yeah. It's nuts.
Awesome, Ramia, can you tell us about today's sponsor?
Yes, I can. I was getting caught in my wires. Manufacturing continues to grow at a rapid rate. Stay ahead of the curve at the MFG meeting this April. The MFG meeting is the ultimate gathering of manufacturing technology minds, bringing together a community of solutions and solvers. Learn how to keep pace with growing demand, make lifelong connections, and see what opportunities lie on the horizons. Go to amtonline.org/events to register.
Thanks, Ramia.
Anytime.
Steven?
Yes.
I hear things happen on the test bed.
Yeah, it's So I think I mentioned last time that we've got multiple people working on the test bed now. Those multiple people being myself and Chloe, fellow tech analysts. And we have our contractor, Russ, who used to work at AMT, and now he's his own boss, contracted for AMT. But he offered to help do some project management for the test bed, and it's been really helpful. And it's just he's doing a great job at helping us stay honest and keep in line with everything. But our most recent updates, Chloe is working on programming her first Raspberry Pi.
Yep.
And while she's done stuff in the past, like programming, what's the other one that's not an Raspberry? Arduinos before. Yeah. This is her first foray into the world of Linux.
Yep.
So there's a lot of broken things.
And it's been down for a while. I mean, she's starting from scratch.
Yeah, and she's doing a great job.
Yep.
Her spirits are high, which is awesome. And she just wants to get back. She wants to get back to the Pocket NC and stop fiddling with the digital side, which I don't care. I'll say it. It's boring, man. So, like, don't get me wrong. I understand the value of data and how it's so necessary to have advanced technologies like the digital twin has to come from a reliable data stream.
Right.
But man, getting that stuff set up it's a headache. It's a hair puller. It's proctalgia. Pain in the butt.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not fun. So we're looking forward to getting back. But I got the robot moving, and that kind of. So I've experienced the new robot software, and the new robot is very capable, and the software is very much like. It's more like that of industrial software as opposed to the X-Arm by UFactory was way more consumer friendly. It was like this is not for the software was made for people who don't know anything about I wouldn't say not know anything about robots, but it's made to be easier to use.
Sure.
As for the IGES robot software is definitely industrial. It's like learning SolidWorks all over again, something like that. But it's working well. The robot's great. And to segue into my article about robotics, my hands are clammy, so the fingerprint's not registering. Singularities, this is from TechCrunch. Singularities are a pain in the neck for robot arms. Jacobi Robotics is trying to solve them. So singularities.
Tell me more.
Not like black holes in space.
Oh,
not,
man.
Not space singularities.
I'm done then.
Robotic singularities are very interesting. It's to put it in as lay as possible, or at least to how I understand it. It's when your robot or the robot stops moving for whatever reason, it comes to a complete stop in the middle of a process because it doesn't think it can do. It has self-doubt. It's really weird. And
Same.
it's weird because you'll instead of like going through the whole motion with moving the robot that we have, for example, and even the last robot we had experienced some issues with singularities. Like you will guide it through, if you use the teach pendant or the teach function, you can manipulate the robot to go in a certain way, and sometimes when you tell it to go to do the same thing again, it'll come to a complete stop, whether it thinks it ran into something, whether the collision detection stopped it, or it thinks it's at the limit of its axes. It will stop moving, and it's really strange. But what's really bothered me is I've gotten the warning light come on, and it comes to a complete stop, and I've actually moved the joint that I want to keep moving, but it thinks it's at the limit, and I will manually from the software tell it plus keep rotating, and it keeps rotating, and they're like, see, you made it past this little hurdle. We can keep going now, and then you hit go, and it will go for another like centimeter, and then come to a complete stop again, and I'll be like, so I'm very excited that this is not me. I didn't know that there was a term for this, and that's what robot singularities are, and there's a company working to solve them.
And that is interesting. So, like the robot poses is fairly interesting. We've talked about that a lot past couple of years about the efficiency of like a robotic arm, and does it always make sense to have a robotic arm or other piece of automation? Like arm, everyone's happy to adopt quickly, but if you're doing like 2 degrees of motion, like is a 6-joint robotic arm the best thing, or do you go to something different, right?
Right. Do you go for a specialized solution, like a
Right.
tailored solution, instead of a robot, which can do everything, but there's a lot more programming to be done
Right.
to make it do everything.
Yeah.
And one of those things is singularities or
Yeah.
robot self-doubt.
Or self-doubt, or do you look at like a scare robot or something that has less degrees of motion but more robust? We've talked about like the force capability and things like that, and getting a robotic arm stuck in a pose, that's what it's trying to prevent. And I do find that very interesting that you have a company very focused on solving a problem that has probably been existing for day one for robots.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting take. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
I've got one on government, some 3D print.
The government.
U.S. government boosts advanced manufacturing with 3 new developments. And it talks about, funding and where the government's headed, because the government is actually a consumer of advanced manufacturing equipment, but also process the resultant of those. And I feel like they're investing a little bit more to drive innovation. So one thing that has come up quite a bit is heat pumps. I don't know if you guys hear about heat pumps being a thing.
Pump. Yeah.
Like in houses, but there's some new advancements about the efficiency of heat pumps where, it's a big thing to drive homes and, using heat pumps as opposed to conventional HVAC systems. And that cascades into manufacturing a little bit differently because there's some new designs coming out, but heat exchangers in general have been a prime opportunity for additive manufacturing process, especially when you look at like space applications, but also aerospace, where they want to get the most out of this structure and at the lowest weight.
If you ask Stephanie Hendrickson and Pete Zielinski who do the Cool Parts show for Gardner Business Media, they say that the most views, the most comments, their hottest videos are always 3D printed heat exchangers.
Yeah, and they're super complex. And it's a couple of years ago at one of our joint committee meetings, we actually had ANSYS walk through a closed loop design where they looked at the design, the analysis, printing process, and then testing, and then driving that back into the initial design. So they had several iterations of this process to refine, through CFD, through structural analysis, and then actually printing the part and running the part itself, both dimensionally and the characteristics of it. So it was very interesting to look at, heat exchangers and heat pumps. The other one, it's kind of a broad section, so there's a list of critical and emerging technologies that the government's kind of looking at. I think this might play into some of the stuff that Steve and I have been looking at on export control. So kind of keep an eye on where they're headed on their emerging technology list, and also how they actually support it. I had a conversation with one of our new members about where the gap is on reshoring efforts. So there's a huge demand in the marketplace, but our manufacturing capability and production volume is still catching up a little bit. How do we foster an environment to de-risk new companies for getting into that? His background is a little more software related, but if you start looking at the risk of a hardware-based startup, the risk goes from several $1 million to tens of $1 million very, very quickly. How, as a nation, do we want to foster those risks? And then the last one, a strategy to forge resilient and healthy defense communities. So they're looking at a couple of tiers within the defense, and with our CTO going on to Blue Forge, it's looking at the growth of the industrial base for defense. They outline some really interesting things that I think are applicable to technologies at most small to medium-sized companies. One is adopting human-centric requirements for manufacturing equipment and processes, optimizing department's footprint, so where the Department of Defense has a footprint and visibility into the manufacturing place. But one thing that affects everyone is transforming portfolio management. So how do they manage? So at their level, how do they manage the F-35 suite of aircraft, right? That cascades down to the different, products. And parallel, we're talking about European companies. Porsche actually does this really, really well, right? The ability to customize, like you can buy the most basic Porsche, or you can buy the most basic Porsche, which every single option that you could ever imagine. Yeah. And you're not stuck with a single, platform that you have to choose from. So
like you and I joke that Australia and Poland will buy anything that our defense industry, cooks up.
Yep.
But have you ever when was the last time have you ever looked up the F-16 on Wikipedia?
Ages ago, like the block.
You should see how many variants there are.
Yeah.
And we don't even get them.
No,
they're for
no.
other countries. Like it is the tuner Honda Civic of fighter jets.
Yeah.
Like everybody loves that thing.
Wait till they put in VTEC and then it takes off.
Dude, the Japanese have the best one, the F2.
Yeah.
F2 fire.
So I thought it was very
I want
interesting.
one.
That's a very interesting look of where they're heading, kind of cascades to a lot of parallels that both our members and end users could potentially look at. So.
Well, I know I shared the article recently that was like that additive is saving the Coast Guard a ton of money.
Yeah.
So
I saw you post it.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that specifically on the podcast at one point. The Coast Guard starting to use more additive manufacturing, and apparently it's saving them a lot of money to use it. So
that's like I know I've on the podcast mentioned the LeBlanc lathe and how during World War II all naval vessels had a machine shop on it, and in that machine there were at least 10 LeBlanc lathes. And now today, people who have them, these like World War II military mil spec manual lathes, can't give them away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see what the LeBlanc lathe equivalent of a 3D printer will be. We won't be around for it, but
And that's a good takeaway.
I'm really pumped.
That's a good takeaway, Alyssa, because I feel like as an industry, as a nation, we're starting to understand how to use 3D printing and additive manufacturing processes. There's still a long way to go, because if you look at what processes are actually valuable, it's still a very disparate bunch of use cases versus what is actually useful.
Do you think it's going to be an Optimec or a Speed 3D?
Alyssa, tell me about STEM.
STEM, yes. So the article that I am sharing today it's an article from the Yale Daily News, and it's an op-ed called "Death of the Women in STEM."
Interesting.
Yes, and it is written by a woman who was in STEM.
Okay.
And it's her talking about the narrative that we frame around women in STEM, which is basically, women in STEM are doing something amazing, which they are, but like kind of put them on this pedestal,
Sure.
and we make them we
And
make
we
it seem
expect them to do something amazing.
exactly.
Sorry.
Is that helping or hurting the narrative around women in STEM?
Yeah.
Because she talks about how when she went into STEM, when she started going into it, no one talks about how you're the only woman in the room, but
Sure.
it's very obvious that you're the only woman in the room.
Yep.
And you're not allowed to say anything about it. You feel like you can't really ask for help because you don't want to feel like you're getting special treatment, because
Right.
then that's a whole other set of issues. And eventually she ended up leaving her job or leaving STEM. And she doesn't know if it's because she stopped enjoying, like she didn't want to be like in engineering anymore,
Sure.
or if it was just burnout from being a woman in STEM.
Yeah.
She said she never actually faced any like discrimination directly,
Sure.
but it was just this heavy weight that she was carrying around being in this position. And I guess that's something that we don't really think about, because, she says that, let me see. Hold on. I was going to read this one
Okay.
article.
Well, while you're looking for that, I do want to say I know I mentioned this before we started recording, but like it's often forgotten that like the most granular general purpose of civil rights is so everybody can just feel like an ordinary person.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be a gray man. Like
Just
wants
blend
to fit
in.
in with the crowd and not be anything, not look like anything special.
Right.
And
And that is interesting. I mean, you bring up some of the key elements I was writing down, and I could definitely relate to some of the stuff on the back end. But, artificially setting the high expectations. We definitely have seen employees in the past role where we've hired someone, and like right off the bat, we're hiring someone right out of college where all of a sudden we expect them to be a high performer or, expect them to be delivering right away. It's like, why did that change from anyone else? Why is that different than, the 5 other people that we hired exactly the same boat? Like what indicators, how did you interview and get to that conclusion? And it's partly was because, they had this perception of the gender that they hired for this role. It's like, where did that come from? We're setting false expectations there.
Well, and it's one of those things where you also have to think about, so if you're interviewing a guy for that same position, would you have those same expectations?
Exactly.
But in the article, she says, once you're immersed in the world, constant messaging promotes STEM to girls as difficult, practical, and praiseworthy. So when you're a woman in STEM, you become a trailblazer, a glass ceiling breaker, and an advocate, and a role model for kids who will follow in your footsteps.
Right.
And that's, I mean...
Some people don't want that.
Yeah. And
Right.
some people, it's like they know exactly what they're going to do when they get into STEM. They know exactly what they're aiming for. But some people go into it just with, like, a passion for something, like engineering or physics or whatever it may be. And then they get into it. And that weight of being a woman in STEM and having to be a role model for these girls can be really, really heavy. And I mean, don't get me wrong, women in STEM is amazing, and I think we do need more women in STEM, but I think maybe we need to rethink how we frame the narrative around it, because obviously we don't want them to burn out and then leave because it's too much.
And that's one thing I kind of picked up on the tail end is that we're putting anyone in that situation into a scenario where nobody really asked them if they wanted that.
Yeah.
Like, do they want to be a role model? Do you want to be a president?
Correct.
Maybe, like my case, back when I was in need, I just want to stay technical.
Yeah.
I just want to solve problems. I don't want to coach. I don't want to do mentoring, right? So one of the things that, we're missing in this is the inclusive conversation of what is your career path? Where do you want to go?
Right.
Well, kind of a weird segue is that I'm big on romance novels, right? And there's this one author named Allie Hazelwood.
Okay.
And
That's
she
hilarious.
writes specifically like STEM-based novels,
Oh,
right?
that
They're
sounds
about
fun.
people in
I-
STEM.
I read
And
the
they're great.
one.
And in one of her novellas, there's one character who is like, she's like, I was really bad in school, but I just really loved Mars. And so I got super into Mars.
Yeah.
And so like people are like, oh, this is like the dream, right? It's been your dream to work at NASA your entire life. And she's like, sure.
Sure.
And she's like, I just wanted to learn, like, I just wanted to work on the Mars rover. Like, it wasn't like I got into this and was like, oh, I just want to be a role model and everything. It's just like, I just want to learn about Mars,
Right.
And I think when I was
Respect.
reading that article, that was kind of the correlation that I saw. I was like, oh, no one really talks about, like, because some people it's like their passion their entire life. And then some people it's just like, this is really interesting to me and I want to pursue it. But there's just so much weight attached to it. Because in the book, the person who asks, they're like, oh, isn't this your dream come true? It's the only other woman in the room.
Right.
Right? And so it's just like this weight of like, oh, is there a right answer to this?
Yeah, that's interesting.
It also
So-
kind of reminds me of the book we read for book club, like Lessons in Chemistry, which was like an
yeah.
extreme, I would say, point of view from that. But she kind of had the same thing where she always had this like chip on her shoulder that she knew that it would be different for her.
That's on
Instead
Apple
of
TV.
being able
Yes.
to, yes, it's
Have
now
you
an
guys
Apple
watched it?
TV show. No.
Okay, I
But
kinda
instead
wanna
of
see
just
it.
being able to like come to work, she like wakes up, put her in her pants like everyone else. She has this extra like expectation set for her just because she is a woman in the same field dominated by men.
Allowed one string of pearls, like in Hidden Figures.
Oh yeah.
I
That's
know
a good
nobody asked me, but I gotta say, like, when I got into physics, sure, space is cool, but I didn't get into physics because I like space. I got into it because I'm really bad at memorizing. And,
Understandable.
and physics was like the one course that when I went into in high school, the teacher was like, all right, for our first exam, you can have one 3x5 note card and only equations on the front. And I'm like, we don't have to memorize the equations? And it was like, yeah, you just have to know how to use them and which one to use. And I was like, easy. And that's why it's like the easiest course ever.
Yeah.
There's no memorization required.
Someone who got a C in physics, I'd have to disagree, but
Well, you're also probably good at memorizing stuff.
I am really good at memorizing.
Yeah,
stuff,
I can't
that's
memorize
true.
the lyrics of a song that I've listened to on repeat 20 times.
That's fair.
I'm the worst at that. Music lyrics.
Yeah, but do you?
I
But
just kind of make up my own.
with your degree in physics, do you go into a room and think everyone like expects you to be a role model?
They expect me to be smart.
That's fair. I mean, that's
They expect
fair.
me to be smart.
And maybe that's another thing where it's like, yes, people who are in STEM, we do consider them very smart, but just because someone's outside of STEM doesn't mean they're not. Like I think it's one of those things where I don't know. We definitely need more women in STEM because proportionally it's outrageous, but I think it's just the perception that we have culturally because it's always been this huge discrepancy between men and women that we're constantly trying to like put so much pressure on the role.
Yeah.
And we highlight it with like, movies like Hidden Figures, which is a great movie and a great book and a great story, but it's like, okay, well, now there's that additional pressure. So I think it's just making sure that we're reframing that narrative so these girls feel like they can go into STEM and not feel like they have a responsibility to anyone but themselves.
That's a fair point. So, to your point, Steve, like the preconceived notion, that applies to a lot of people, right? It's not only gender-based, but if you say I have a physics degree, that means like, oh, what atoms did you split? Like, where did that come from? I just did a 5-year degree on physics,
I split
right?
an atom this morning in the bathroom.
And, to be fair, I get that a lot, right? Like when I enter the room, like, oh, what server did you install? Like, I'm not in IT, bro. I'm not writing code. I'm designing stuff here. So I think I do see a shift in kind of the preconceived notions, like generationally. My daughter's 9, and there's a big age difference between all the generations past us. I think I'm like a Gen X, and my wife is like a millennial, and there's like a bunch of other generations. And there's a shift on like walking into the room and just having a blank mind. Just stop prejudging like the room that you walk in and just move forward. So,
I didn't realize it was a privilege to be comfortable with walking into the room and just loving the fact that I'm the dumbest person. Like that really is a privilege, though.
I do feel like that's also a larger conversation of like women in general,
and just that could be put on so many different things. Agreed.
In professional environments, especially.
Let's do some planning with Women's History Month coming up. Maybe we can have some special content.
That would be awesome.
And I gotta say, like, we have to pat ourselves on the back. The manufacturing industry, I mean, not us or AMT, even though we're doing a lot with it, but I think over the years, and I mentioned this at IMTS 2022 when Ben and I were on the main stage. It was like the most diverse manufacturing trade show that I had ever been to in 2022. It was that diverse because my first one was 2016 and 2018, and I promised Kat there's a term that I won't use anymore. But it was all guys. It was all guys in 2016 and 2018. 2016, there were even booth babes. But now we've got to really... Stop laughing at me, I'm being serious.
No, I figured out what the phrase is.
Same.
It's like beer fest, but not beer.
Yeah, we get it. We get
it.
Okay. It's fine. It's in my head. I understand.
And that's it.
Guys, we covered a lot of different things. Thanks for the conversation today.
Go team.
Ramia, where can they find more info about us?
amtonline.org/resources. Like, share, subscribe. Shameless plug. We'll be on the main stage at IMTS 2024.
Bird up.
Tell us about cookies.
Bye.
Bing bong.